In the next few videos, we're going to be doing some preventive engine maintenance on my daily S2000. Sit back, relax, and maybe after you watch the videos, you'll have the courage and confidence to do this on your own F20 or F22C engine, if your miles are up there. Since the valve cover paint coating is peeling and worn, I'm going to start by removing the valve cover first so it can be sent out to get power coated while we perform a time and chain service. I'm going to start by removing the gold spark plug cover and the ignition coils. When removing the ignition coil connectors, due to the heat trapped underneath the cover and the age, the plastic tabs off the ignition coil connectors are going to be very brittle. Do not squeeze the tabs with your fingers because the tabs will immediately break off. Instead, use a slight angle pick tool at the corners of the connector and slightly pry the right tab outward while pulling back on the right side connector until it releases. Then the same with the left tab while pulling on the connector. Connector will release without breaking the lock tabs off. Use a pick. Also, wouldn't be a bad idea to buy a set of connectors before starting the task just in case stuff happens or find tabs already broken. Next, remove the coils and move wire harness off the valve cover. Next, remove the bolts off the fuel injector cover, then pull back the vacuum hose clamps. Remove vacuum hose off the PCV valve and remove cover. Next, remove both camshaft position sensor connectors in the same manner as the ignition coil connector or lock tab will break. And the same steps with the exhaust cam positioning sensor. Next, crack loose and remove all valve cover bolts. Remove and throw out all rubber gaskets around bolts. They will need to be replaced with the cover gasket. If the valve cover has been mounted on since it rolled off the assembly line in Japan, you're most likely going to be fighting with the cover and tools to take the cover off. Fucking glued on this one. Give area another good look over to make sure everything is disconnected and out of the way before removing the valve cover. Next, remove the valve cover gasket and throw it in the garbage. Now going to be removing the spark plug cavity seals, which the gasket assembly itself has a metal frame inside the rubber diameter, which is similar to a differential axle seal. Carefully with a flat blade screwdriver or small chisel bit, hammer out the edges of the spark plug cavity seal without nicking or gouging the spark plug cavity bores. If you nick or gouge the cavity bores, you then may have an oil leak into the spark plug cavity chamber even with new gaskets. At this point, hopefully Honda Bond will fill in the nick while inserting the new seals in the bore, but don't recommend that as a repair. Next, if you have the stock setup, start removing the vacuum hoses, hardware, and intake box assembly itself. Also, take pictures with your smartphone on vacuum hoses, connections, or anything else you're not sure of, because stuff can go wrong very easily during installation and may cause check engine light to come on. Now start draining fluids out before proceeding further. Next, with the serpentine belt still on, crack loose the water pump pulley bolts. Bolts are small and may snap using any power tools on it. If we're using a serpentine belt, mark an arrow to the belt to ensure that the belt mounts and spins in the same direction as it came off. Next, apply pressure in the counterclockwise direction to the auto tensioner assembly and remove the drive belt. Now remove the idler pulley and hardware as well. Next, remove the water pump pulley. Most likely will be stuck on there and require some prime force to remove. stuck on like they usually are. I'm just trying to pry it, but it's I get them loose. There you go, never mind, I got it loose. Next, remove the mounting bolts off the alternator and the belt tensioner assembly. With the negative battery terminal being disconnected before getting to this point, slightly pry the alternator outward and start removing the connections to the alternator. Next, remove the mounting bolts and the water bypass hose, then move the metal hose out of the way of the time and chain cover area. You can remove the pulley off the tensioner assembly, but I decided to remove the intake support bracket and the tensioner assembly itself out completely to have more room around the area, since the water pump and thermostat are also going to be replaced. Wobble extension, or that tensioner is not coming off. Next, with a ratchet, carefully crack loose the water pump assembly bolts as they are rusted and can easily snap. I would definitely not take these bolts with an impact because they do not feel perfect. They can snap. I believe I got new bolts. They can, like, these bolts can definitely fucking snap. Also, besides replacing the water pump itself, make sure you have new hardware as well, because reusing them is not a very good idea. Right into the drain. Very good. It's got a nice gasket to it. They're smart about it. Let's see, how clean is our coolant system, since we always did this thing every 5 years. This thing is fucking not even oxidizing. That's how clean it is. That thing has some life to it, no? It's the cleanest water pump I've ever seen. The coolant system on my S2000 has been serviced every 5 years since ownership with OEM Honda coolant. So this is a good example of a clean coolant system at 133,000 miles. Next, remove the crank sensor plug and assembly out of the timing case cover. Crank sensor may also be stuck on the cover assembly, so penetrating oil and delicate prying will be required to remove the sensor. In the next video, we're going to take the F22C apart even further to have access to the timing chain and the chain tensioner, so stay tuned for the next video.